what's up? Today I'm gonna show you how to make an epic takeout Mongolian beef at home. In this video, I'll show you how to avoid gloppy overstarched sauce. I'll show you how to make this dish with and without a wok, and I'm gonna show you how to hit that sweet spot of crispy and saucy that only the best takeout places seem to get right. To get started, I'll need about 1 pound of flank steak. If you want a cheaper alternative to flank steak, which can easily be $15 a pound, go for top round. This cut is tough and pretty lean, but with the process that we're using, that doesn't matter. Personally, I prefer to spend a little bit more on flank because top round doesn't really have that much beef flavor. Now to prep this flank, I'm gonna slice it into 3 pieces going with the grain, meaning parallel to the lines in the meat. Then I'll flip 90 degrees and slice this flank against the grain every 1/4 inch or so. Make sure you've got a sharp knife for this one because flank steak has a loose grain that can easily get torn apart by dull knives. Next, I'll scoop my cut beef into a bowl, then I'll add my marinade, which is 10 grams of soy sauce, 10 grams of sesame oil, 15 grams of Shaoxing cooking wine, or if you don't keep this in your pantry, use mirin. Next in goes a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, or a strong 2-finger pinch, then 10 grams of cornstarch and 5 grams of MSG. Next, I'll jump into the bowl and toss to combine. The cornstarch baking soda combination make it so that you can pretty much use whatever beef you want and the results will still be tender and juicy. The baking soda inhibits some of the beef proteins from linking up, which makes the meat super tender, and the coating of cornstarch helps it hold on to its moisture in a high heat context. Once combined, I'll marinate for 10 to 15 minutes. 15 minutes later, I'll pour about 1.5 cups of plain cornstarch into a medium bowl. No need for specifics here, we just need enough to cover up all this meat, so eyeball it. Next, I'll drop all this marinated flank into my starch, and if there's any excessive moisture in the bowl, leave that behind. From here, I'll jump in and toss this steak to coat it with the cornstarch. Since this beef is moist from the marinade, it should grip the powder pretty easily, but you still want to get in there and make sure that every bit of surface area is evenly covered. When I'm done, the beef should be lightly coated all over, but not totally caked. This next step is optional, but useful. I'm gonna flip all the meat into a colander or salad spinner, then shake off the excessive starch. Of course, you could just shake this off by hand and move it over to a plate or whatever, but I find that there's still too much starch hanging around if you go that route. Oh, and if you're opting to go wok free, you can totally skip this cornstarch breading step altogether. Once shaken off, I'm gonna move this beef over to a sheet tray and let it sit for 10 minutes so that the starch can soak up a little bit of the beef moisture and the two can unify into one thing. This helps the coating stick so much better. In the meantime, I'm gonna prep the rest of this dish by grabbing a 3-inch knob of ginger and grating that on the old microplane. If you don't have one of these, you could certainly chop this with the knife, but you'll need to peel the ginger. The microplane does a great job of breaking down the ginger skin, so I don't have to worry about peeling. Next, I'll just smash 5 to 6 cloves of garlic with the back of my knife, then mince them. I'm not grating the garlic here because it would burn in the high heat of the wok if it were broken down that small. A rough chop gives me about 90 seconds of cook time before the garlic starts to cross over that very fine line from golden brown to burnt. Next, I'll take about 75 grams or 1.5 bunches of scallions and cut off the stem end, then thinly slice the whites up into the part where they cross over to green. Once I'm up here, I'll just cut those scallion tops into roughly 2-inch lengths. Keep these 2 parts of the scallion separate because we're gonna be cooking them at different times. Next, I'll grab 2 bell peppies and slice off the sides and the bottom, leaving as much of the white pith attached to the seedy core as possible. Once I've got those planked out, I'm gonna very carefully remove the rest of the watery, pithy stuff. Then I'm gonna slice these bell peppers into 1/4 inch strips, maybe a touch wider. I want pieces that are wide enough to hold on to some snap after being cooked, but aren't so wide that you feel like you're chewing on bell pepper forever. Now to make this wok sauce, I'll combine 60 grams of brown sugar with 85 grams of soy sauce, 120 grams of store-bought beef stock, and 5 grams of cornstarch. There we go. Next, I'll just stir that to get the cornstarch dissolved into the liquid. And that's all the mise en place that we need for this dish. Now, let's cook it. For that, I'll grab my wok and drop it on the stove over medium heat. Then, with the handle placed safely off to the side and not pointing out over the edge, I'll add in about a 6 to 7 second glug of peanut oil, or about 1.5 cups. If you don't want to go through the trouble of shallow frying anything, I suggest the no wok method that I'm going to show you guys in just a second. Now, once this oil is up to about 375 to 400 F, I'm gonna go back to my beef. At this point, the starch has hydrated quite a bit and it looks really well stuck to the meat. I can tell because it's gone from white to more of a reddish orange color. From here, I'm going to very carefully drop 1/3 of my starched beef into the oil away from my body to avoid splashing and well spread out so that the beefs aren't sitting on top of each other. And once the beef is in, do not touch it for at least 2.5 to 3 minutes. At this point, the cornstarch coating is super fragile and it will slough off if you agitate it. Normally at this point when you're frying stuff, I'll tell you guys to go out of your way to agitate things so that they don't stick together or to the bottom of the pot. But for this beef, that is 100% the wrong thing to do. You can see what the results are here. We've got oily starch barely stuck to fried meat. It's disgusting. So after 2 to 3 minutes of not moving, I'll come back and check to see how it looks. At this point, we've got crispy edges, the coating is well attached, and we're starting to brown. So from here, I'm gonna move this first batch over to a paper towel lined sheet tray. Then I'm gonna thank Element for sponsoring this video. These days, staying hydrated means that I keep a stack of Element packets in my kitchen. I reach for one pretty much every day because it's got that ideal balance of electrolytes, no sugar, and no weird ingredients. That's probably why pro athletes use it. But honestly, it's just as good for regular people like me who try to stay active and eat well most of the time. Now that it's cold out, I'm really liking Element's chocolate medley. I'll add the chocolate electrolyte packet into my morning coffee to make a little salty sweet mocha, or other times I'll mix some chocolate chai into some hot almond milk. This is an instant, cozy, salty hot chocolate with electrolytes. If that combination sounds bad, I totally get it. That's what I thought before I tried it, but you gotta trust me. It tastes very good. Whoa, kind of tastes like Swiss Miss, but salty. Head over to drinkelement.com/Brian Lagerstrom to pick up the chocolate medley or any other flavor, and they'll throw in a free sample pack with your purchase. Element offers no questions asked refunds, so you can try that chocolate medley for yourself risk-free. I'll leave the link down in the description. Thank you, Element. Now I'm gonna finish up the beef by laying in the last third and frying for 3 minutes without touching. If you're wondering how to make this dish work without a wok, I would fry the beef in a 2 to 3 quart saucepan. Frying this in a shallower pan like a non-stick or a stainless can work, but getting the beef fully submerged is pretty difficult, and it's a little bit dangerous because the oil fills up so much of the pan. The process is the same though. Fry at about 375, don't touch for 3 minutes, and pull out when the beef is getting golden brown and crispy. If you're not so attached to crispiness but still want a delicious version of Mongolian beef, you can definitely recreate this dish in a non-stick pan from the beginning. Just skip the cornstarching and frying steps and start by stir-frying the beef right after the 15-minute marinade. I'll saute over medium-high heat for about 3 to 4 minutes or until the beef is cooked through and it's taken on some nice browning. From here, I'll move over to a plate to hang out, and then I'll follow the recipe exactly the same as I'm about to show you with the wok. And once I've got all 3 batches of beef run through the hot oil, I'll drain on a sheet tray, then move into the final stage. Before I do that, I'm gonna carefully pour off my frying oil into a bowl to cool it down. If you're concerned about reuse, strain off the solids and keep cool in the fridge for a couple of months until the next time you wanna fry something. At this point, my wok is pretty nasty and covered in beef starch, so I'm gonna use a paper towel to wipe it out and reset. Once this thing's ripping, I'm gonna add in a generous drizzle of peanut oil, or about 2 to 3 tablespoons. Then I'll add in 5 to 6 dried chilies. These are Chile de Arbol, which are widely available, and they're gonna perfume the oil and provide a subtle fruity heat to the base of this dish. After 30 seconds of blooming, I'm gonna add in my sliced scallion whites and toss to get those sizzling and combined with the oil. Then in goes 15 grams of ginger and 25 grams of garlic. From here, I'll get that stirred up and fry for about a minute over high heat. Keep things moving constantly from here on out though, because the ginger and the garlic are very delicate and they can burn easily if they stay in a hot place for too long. Now a touch more oil goes in, then I'll drop in my sliced bell peppers and give those a quick shimmy to get things combined. The wok that I'm using here is brand new, so the seasoning isn't really dialed in 100%, so I need to keep a close eye on that. See right here how things are sticking up in the corner? That's totally fine. I'm just gonna scrape it up and keep things moving, but if it gets too dark, I advise you to drop in a splash of water to loosen things up. Okay, after 90 seconds of high heat stir frying, these peppers have softened just a touch and the aromatics are smelling amazing. From here, I'm gonna pour in my wok sauce around the hot outer edge to get a little bit of caramelization. Then I'm gonna bring everything up to a simmer and cook for about 60 to 90 seconds. This is gonna activate the cornstarch and get it thickening, and also it'll soften the bell peppers just a little bit more. Once my sauce is thickened and the peppers have lost their raw edge, I'm gonna add in all of my crispy beef and then immediately toss to get that coated in the sauce. To keep things crispy, there should not be an excess of sauce here. There should be just enough to glaze up the meat. Most Chinese food places bathe their Mongolian beef in overly thickened sauce, and that softens the texture of the fried meat that we work so hard to get. get. For me, this look right here is perfect. The meat is evenly coated, but not swimming in sauce. If for whatever reason your dish is swimming in sauce like this, I would say go ahead and add in a tablespoon of cornstarch slurry. I usually go for a 2-to-1 water to starch blend, and then I'll boil it for 10 to 15 seconds. If you're pursuing the non-wok version of this recipe, you'll fry the aromatics just like we did in the wok, but over lower heat to not damage your nonstick coating. Then you'll drop in the peppers, saute for 60 to 90 seconds, then add in your sauce, cook for 90 seconds just like we did in the wok, then fold in the beef that we sauteed separately. This dish tastes pretty similar to the version we made in the wok, it just doesn't have the crispy part. It's still very delicious though, and it eats more like beef and broccoli. Okay, back at the wok version. The last step is to add in the scallion tops and fold those in. I'm gonna wanna make sure to serve this right away to maintain freshness of the veggies and the crispiness of the beef. You guys, out of all of the takeout dishes that I've done on this channel, this one is at the top. You got crispy beef, meaty sauce that's not too sweet, and snappy, delicious fresh vegetables. When the sauce soaks into the beef a little bit, you also get this amazing textural dynamic that's simultaneously really crispy in parts, but then velvety and soft in others. I really hope you guys try this recipe. It slays anything you can order from a takeout place or get at PF Chang's. If you guys want to see another fun recipe video, then please check out this one linked here. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.